Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 Om Jnana-Niranjasya Jnana-Salakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishram Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapatakamallam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sadhana Raghunatham Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parikrasaitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sadhana Lalita Shri Vishakhamritamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Paramani Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnuvaya Krishna Prasaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Veshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna. Wow. It's so nice to see everyone.
Welcome back to
I'm looking and I'm thinking, all the kids look older. And all the adults look younger. Something magical has happened. Very sweet. Nice to be back with all of you after a long time. Maybe not long enough for some. But it's nice. So, this is the power of devotee association. That who would miss this cold weather, this difficult climate, but it is not that to be missed. At least I was missing all of you and being with all of you, so it's very warm to be back. So whatever external temperature is actually irrelevant. It's nice to be back and discussing this most glorious Bhagavad Gita with everybody. So, thank you for allowing me to come back into your assembly. So, actually I'm a little bit lost. Where are we discussing? Chapter 4, right?
4.5.
4.5. So what did we did verses 4 last week?
Yeah,
4 and 5 last week you did?
3 and 4.
3 and 4. And verses 1 and 2 prior to that?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the title of this chapter? Transcendental knowledge. And what is transcendental knowledge?
Knowing about Krishna, he is eternal and he is Sachitananda.
So knowing about Krishna, he is eternal, Satchit Ananda. Yeah? What else is part of transcendental knowledge?
Comes from Krishna. Comes from the Krishna origin.
So the knowledge comes from Krishna. Knowledge about Krishna can only come from basic logic, right? What else?
And Krishna knows our past, present and future.
He knows past, present,
And future.
that's the most troubling. Wait a minute, how he knows the future? If he knows what I'm doing in the future, where is my free will? Right? We have these questions. Yes, so he knows past, present, and future. What else is transcendental knowledge? Why do we use the word transcendental?
almost subtle, that is not known to everybody else as direct view, indirect view.
So this knowledge is not known by everybody directly. It's very, he uses the word subtle, right? Because transcendental knowledge relates to the knowledge of one topic related to us. That is Krishna. And related to us? Relationship. And who has the relationship with Krishna?
Everyone.
As soul. My body has an indirect relationship. So this knowledge is transcendental because it relates to the topics of the soul. So then by meaning of transcendental knowledge, it means that the result of this knowledge is different from the result of all other knowledge. So regardless of what university institution of learning you go to, what is the result of that knowledge?
Temporary.
Temporary.
Leads to misery.
And ends in misery.
Only for sense gratification.
Only for sense gratification. Basically, we learn 4 things. What are those 4 things we learn?
How to eat nicely, sleep nicely, mate nicely, and different nicely. Probably last week only.
So many departments of knowledge.
Last
So
week-
many degrees. But that's all we learn? 4 things? Eat, sleep, mate. How to do that? Very luxuriously. The higher academic institutions teach us how to do better. But at the end of the day, it is those 4 activities. Right? Eating, sleeping, mating, and the result we know is temporary and leads to, ultimately, misery. Maybe some intermittent moments of happiness, just like in the desert. We'll find water, but will we find it very abundantly? Is it true to say there's no water in the desert?
No.
It's there, but is it intelligent to search for water in the desert if you have an option? So similarly, finding happiness on the bodily platform, it's there, but it's in such tiny, tiny quantity and frequency. It's foolish to try to find happiness on the bodily platform. As foolish as it would be to go into the desert looking for water. That's how foolish it would be, because it's very limited. But transcendental knowledge gives us knowledge of the soul, and knowledge of the soul that leads one to find eternal happiness. Because who is the source of all ananda, happiness? If he is the source of all happiness, then if we approach Krishna, is there anywhere else that could get us more happiness? He is the source of complete happiness. And he only has one activity. What is Krishna's singular activity?
Anandamaya.
Please
Ananda Yasha. He gives his devotees happiness. He enjoys giving happiness to his devotees. That's Krishna's only activity. And we know, what is the devotees' only activity?
Pleasing Krishna.
They enjoy giving happiness to Krishna. Always it's a 2-way street. It's not a 1-way street. Right? We always talk about that, right? So this is transcendental knowledge in a nutshell. So Krishna is establishing in these opening verses the difference between Krishna and himself and Arjuna. Because Arjuna does not remember the past, right? But who remembers the past? Krishna. So that was established, and Arjuna asked this question in the 4th verse, the last verse. How is it that Vivashwan, who is senior by birth to you, you instructed him? So sometimes we put these criteria, we look at the Dasha Avatar, we look at the order, 1, 2, 3, 4, and oh wait, who is this?
Who comes first?
Who comes first? But in a circle, where is the beginning and where is the end? We cannot, by our own analysis, determine beginning and end. So actually we have to go to Shastra to understand. But Arjuna has asked this question and is leading up to a very important verse coming up in this chapter. One of the most important and instructive verses, because Krishna is going to tell Arjuna in a few verses that if you understand the nature of my activities and of my appearance, this is Krishna speaking, you can achieve liberation. Means, wait a minute, that's it? I just need to know the nature of your appearance activities. But Krishna says, Janma karma cha me divyam. Right? Janma and karma. If you know these two things, he tells Arjuna, Naiti mam iti sarjuna. You never come back to this material world. This whole punarjama, the whole world, you can transcend. So understanding this distinction between Krishna and Arjuna will become very, very important, because that is where we begin to understand the difference between us and Krishna. The nature of our activities and the nature of Krishna's activities. The nature of our appearance and the nature of Krishna's appearance. So that Krishna is building up as we approach that very important verse. I think it's the 9th verse, so a few verses. So he is starting to answer this question about remembering past and not remembering past in this 5th verse. So let's read the 5th and we'll discuss a little bit. It's a longer purport. We'll discuss. Someone like to read the verse?
Shri Bhagavan Bahuni me vyapitani janmani tava charjuna tanyaham veda sarvani natvam veda parantapa. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. The personality of Godhead said, many words both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy.
Purport? Everyone can take one paragraph.
In the Brahma Samhita 5.33, we have information of many incarnations of the Lord. It is stated there. Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Mananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Nava Yavanam Cha Vedesu Durlabam Madurlabam Atma Bhaktau Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning. Although expanded into unlimited forms, he is still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord are usually not understood by even the best Vedic scholars, but they are always manifest pure, unalloyed devotees.
It is also stated in Brahma Samhita 5.39, Ramadi Murtishu Kala Niyamena Kishtam Nanavataram Akarod Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishnaha Swayam Samabhavat Paramaha Pumanyo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is always situated in various incarnations such as Rama, Narasimha, and many sub-incarnations as well. But who is the original personality of Godhead known as Krishna, and who incarnates personally also. In the Vedas also it is said that the Lord, although one without a second, manifests himself in innumerable forms. He is like Vaidurya stone, which changes colors yet still remains one. All those multiforms are understood by the pure,
unalloyed devotees, but not by a simple study of Vedas. Uh, Devotees like Arjuna are constant companions of the Lord, and whenever the Lord incarnates, the associate devotees also incarnate in order to serve the Lord in different capacities. Arjuna is one of these devotees, and in this verse it is understood that some millions of years ago, when Lord Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita to the sun god Vivashwan, Arjuna in a different capacity was also present. But the difference between the Lord and Arjuna is that the Lord remembered the incident, whereas Arjuna could not remember. That is the difference between the part and partial, living entity and the Supreme Lord. Although Arjuna is addressed herein as the mighty hero who could subdue the enemies, he is unable to recall what had happened in his various past sports. Therefore, a living entity, however great he may be in the material estimation, can never equal the Supreme Lord. Anyone who is a constant companion of the Lord is certainly a liberated person, but he cannot be equal to the Lord. The Lord is described in the Brahma Samhita as infallible, Achyuta, which means that he never forgets himself, even though he is in material contact. Therefore, the Lord and the living entity can never be equal in all respects, even if the living entity is as liberated as Arjuna. Although Arjuna is a devotee of Lord, he sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord, but by the divine grace, a devotee can at once understand the infallible condition of the Lord, whereas a non-devotee or a demon cannot understand this transcendental nature. Consequently, these descriptions in the Gita cannot be understood by demonic brains. Krishna remembered acts which are performed by him millions of years ago, but Arjuna could not, despite the fact that both Krishna and Arjuna are eternal in nature. We may also note herein that a living entity forgets everything due to his change of body, but the Lord remembers because he does not change. His Satchit the body. He is Advaita, which means there is no distinction between his body and himself. Everything in the relation to him is spirit, whereas the conditioned soul is different from his material body, and because the Lord's body and self are identical, his position is always different from that of the ordinary living entity. Even when he descends to the material platform, the demons cannot adjust themselves to the transcendental nature of the Lord, which the Lord himself explains in the following verse.
So again, the verse reads, the personality God has said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot. O subduer of the enemy. So Krishna refers to Arjuna as Parantapa. So why is Krishna referring to Arjuna as subduer of the enemy? He wants to illustrate a very important point. So Prabhupada kind of alludes towards the end of the purport. Is Krishna glorifying Arjuna or minimizing Arjuna? Glorifying. By referring to him as? What does he refer to him? Subduer of the enemies. So why do we think Krishna wants to make that? Why does he call Arjuna that in this instance? Because on one hand he's saying, I remember but you do not. Right? So it's a caution to all of us. What is that caution to all of us?
So, although Arjuna is a devotee of Lord, he sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord.
So he's a devotee of the Lord. How dear of a devotee?
Very close.
Very close.
Friend.
Friendly. We'll hear later in Bhagavad Gita, they used to share the same foodstuffs, share the same bed, would enjoy very casually together, very close. So does that make them equal?
No.
Still, there is a significant difference in potency. So Arjuna is being referred to. So the great, materialist thinks, oh, if I just acquire a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more wealth, a little bit more strength, I'll be able to conquer the world. Right? And we see such false egoism throughout the world. It is a source of all conflict, actually. But this idea that I can, ascend even if I acknowledge God is some higher power, the foolish, unintellectual thinks that I can ascend to that position. I can reach that level of capacity, of potency. But Krishna is reminding us, by calling Arjuna the subduer of the enemy. That you are the strong that can subdue anybody. Yet, you cannot remember what happened 100 years ago. Nor do you know what will happen 100 years from now. And that is to give all of us some insight into how to acquire this transcendental knowledge. So Prabhupada writes in the very beginning of the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, there is only one way in which we're going to acquire this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. There's a specific mood we must have. Anybody remembers? What does Prabhupada tell us right in the beginning? Some of you are reading the introduction now.
Submission.
Huh?
Mood of submission.
Mood of submission,
Humility.
Humble and submissive.
humbleness, devotion. In the spirit of devotion, which includes humility, submissiveness, this understanding. But in the spirit of love for Krishna, then this knowledge is received. So Prabhupada writes very importantly in this verse that Arjuna is a great devotee of the Lord. But how is it that he acquired this knowledge? How did he acquire this knowledge? By Krishna. By the mercy of Krishna. There's no other way. So if the great Arjuna could not acquire this knowledge by any other way, then what hope do we have? What hope do we have? The only means to acquire this transcendental knowledge is by the mercy of Krishna. It is the only way. And that is why he said previously, Evam parampara praptam. Right? He says, this is descending knowledge. It's not that I can go and analyze, do my own experimentation, and draw my own conclusions. That might be interesting for our mental gymnastics, as Prabhupada would say. But no factual conclusion will be brought about. No factual conclusion. This knowledge is absolutely in descending order. So it only comes by the mercy of Krishna. Is there any other way? Any other way? We're convinced? Only Krishna can tell us the secret of all that needs to be known. That he'll reveal in the 9th chapter, the most confidential knowledge. But we must be absolutely convinced. Because what is the scope of knowledge that exists in the world? How much knowledge is out there in the world? A little bit? Right? We were just walking around a university yesterday and saw there was a department of human evolution and social change. I thought to myself, wow, there's a whole department, pretty big building, all centered around this study. And I was just thinking to myself, there's no conclusion that can be drawn from that study because it's all on the bodily platform. But with few simple verses from Bhagavad Gita, you could take out all the books in the library and give the whole conclusion of what is happening with the evolution of the human body and social change. Right? Just read one chapter from 12th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. It explains the whole social change of Kali Yuga. Whole social change in maybe 40 verses, 35 verses. And I'm thinking there's a whole department. I'm thinking there's probably an old gray-haired professor with long hair, beard, who spent his whole life studying this. And I just felt pain and saying, wow, what a waste of time. And like then you go to another place, there's a whole other department with equally knowledge that in the end, what is it going to do? But if to the untrained eye, it seems very valuable, very powerful knowledge, great research, great innovation, great thinking is happening. But actually, when you step back and look at it, all the knowledge, it must come from. So there's no shortage of knowledge out there, but we need to know what knowledge will actually help us achieve our ultimate goal. And so Krishna is the source of all knowledge. That we have to have strong conviction in. He is the source of all knowledge. Because he is what makes Krishna the source of all knowledge, the unequivocal, indisputable source of all knowledge. Not one idea of knowledge, but of all absolute knowledge. There's one fact that makes him the only, I'll go even further, the only source of all knowledge. How can we say that with firm and absolute conviction?
He's eternal.
But I am eternal too. You're eternal also.
Is Advaita.
Huh?
Advaita.
Which means?
He body is not changing. He and himself is same.
There is no difference between.
Okay, so he has a magical form, but my spiritual form is also doesn't change and is eternal, and so I'm just arguing a little bit. So let's keep going. Why is Krishna the only and absolute source of all knowledge?
He's the source of everything, another.
He's the source of everything.
Another Brahma.
He's the source of everything. Who else can claim that? Anybody else? Nobody else. Every other entity comes from someone. But Krishna is the only source of all sources. Cause of all causes. So because he is the supreme source, it means then he is the supreme source of knowledge. Nobody can have more knowledge than him. Also, very important, if everything ultimately emanates from Krishna, then nobody can have a different opinion than Krishna, meaning factual opinion. So everybody's entitled to their opinions, but nobody can present a fact that is different from a fact Krishna presents. Because he is the absolute truth. So that, and this obviously causes great confusion and great, consternation in different, sort of spiritual practices. But this is an absolute fact. And Prabhupada is establishing that by quoting these two verses from Brahma Samhita. We see so many different incarnations How many incarnations?
Waves in the ocean.
Can you count the number of waves in an ocean? Just as you cannot count the number of waves in an ocean, you cannot count the number of incarnations. So are all the same? Kind of a trick question. They're all equally potent. They're all equally potent. Just as one candle might light 100 candles, all 100 candles, they burn with the same intensity. But still, there is one source candle that lit the other candles. How they came to become lit, ignited, must be ignited by another source of fire. The candle does not self-ignite. Who is that source? Lord Brahma uses this example to explain that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. And that makes him the absolute source of all knowledge. Which means then that we need to, if Krishna says something with absolute, you do these 4 things. Do we need to know what else we should do? Do we need to evaluate that against some other opinion? Because Krishna is the source of all absolute knowledge. So, it is only by the mercy of Krishna we will get this transcendental knowledge. So then what's the next question? If only by the mercy of Krishna we're going to get this knowledge, how to get the mercy of Krishna? Anybody know how do we get the mercy of Krishna?
Mercy of Guru.
Mercy. No other way?
Devotee. Pure devotee.
But without mercy of Guru, can one get mercy of Krishna? Just as one cannot get any knowledge without the mercy of Krishna, and who establishes this fact? Without mercy of Guru, one cannot get mercy of Krishna? Krishna. So now do we have any debate? And any questions? There's nothing to discuss. We just have to take it as it is. Our false ego may resist, may reject, but facts are facts. That without the mercy of Krishna, we cannot obtain this mercy. But to get the mercy of Krishna, we need the mercy of Guru. So then what's the next question?
How to get the mercy of Guru?
How to get the mercy of Guru? How do we get the mercy of Guru?
By Krishna.
By Krishna. Who says that?
Krishna.
So by the mercy of Guru, we get mercy of Krishna. By mercy of Krishna, we get mercy of Guru. So they are hand in hand. One achieves this transcendental knowledge. Arjuna is getting this knowledge, though he is the great subduer of the enemy, by the mercy of Krishna, who also happens to be his Guru. Right? It also happens to be his Guru. So he has a 2-in-1. But we should not think that we do not have the exact same fortune that Arjuna had. To think, oh, I don't have Krishna as my instructing Guru is actually a great offense. Because now we have not understood the potency of Krishna to empower his external representatives to deliver this message to us. If I think that, oh, Arjuna's fortunate, I am less fortunate, it means that I don't have faith in Krishna's system. Krishna has set up this guru sishya process. Evam parampara praptam imam rajasa viduhu. He has established this. Nobody else. So if he established it, we can have full faith that it is perfect. That it is fully potent. That it has no flaws. If there is any flaw experienced, it is only because of our application of it. But the system itself is absolute and perfect. Right? So this is the transcendental knowledge that Krishna gave. Prabhupada starts to introduce this distinction between Krishna's form and our form, between Krishna. But I think we'll say, because as we get into next few verses, this will become it's a very important topic. So to not be too repetitive, but we'll just introduce it briefly here. That we know we are not this body, right? That we have hammered into our consciousness. But it's still so hard to realize. Like that, it's also hard for us to understand that Krishna is his body. That when we see Krishna, that is not body and soul. It's all spirit. It is all Satchit Ananda. When Krishna decides to grow a little bit, he doesn't grow by the force of time. We grow by the force of time. We age by the force of... Anybody gets to choose, today I'd like to be 2 days older than yesterday? But who gets to choose? So he chooses, I'll advance it. And then he can also slow down. Krishna is about how many years old when speaking Bhagavad Gita? How many years has he been on this planet Earth in speaking Bhagavad Gita? 100 plus, almost 125. And what age he looks?
60.
That's some good anti-aging cream. That is because his body is not material. His body does not move by the force of time. That is a material energy. His body changes at his own will. To give variety to the residents of Vrindavan, he goes through different transformations. But by his choosing. We go by the force of time. So, like that, we saw in Shri Upanishad, we have veins and arteries and muscles and tendons and bones, and we know they're there when they don't work. When the smallest of thing doesn't work, then we realize, wow, how much I'm dependent on this little small piece of elastic. Right? But Krishna has none of that. He has none of that. So, his body is fully spiritual. So again, we'll discuss this more in the next couple of verses, leading up to this very important verse of verse 9. So maybe end here. Any comments or questions?
I have a
Yes.
couple of questions.
Yes, please.
I think I was still, or I'm still confused about Advaita. I thought that Purush and Prakriti, when they're same, that is Advaita. But here, so I was, till now, this time I was thinking, we are not different from Satchidanand, and we are part of that cosmic universal consciousness, which is Krishna. But this verse gives me a different perspective of saying that Advaita is actually when Krishna doesn't have Purush and Prakriti, but Satchidanand, right? Does it make sense?
Yeah, so this topic of Dvaita and Advaita, we know that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu helped us understand this. So first of all, having some confusion on this is actually natural. Because there's it's called Achintya Beda Beda Tattva. Achintya means inconceivable. So it's inconceivable to be Beda and Abeda. Same and different. At the same time, right? But in material realm, something cannot be hot and cold. It cannot be both. The room cannot be dark and light at the same time. Right? So in our material experience, we don't see this simultaneously one in difference. So it's always a little bit hard, just like this idea of eternal. The idea of eternal is not something our material mind can process because we don't have any experience of eternality. So, are we Advaita or Advaita? Are we one or different? We are both simultaneously. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains. And he says this is Achintya Beda Beda Tattva, which means we are the same as Sat Chit Ananda because we are part and parcel of Krishna. But we are eternally separated. Not in relationship, but in form, in tattva. So our soul remains eternally separated. It is a separated expansion from Krishna. It never merges back in. But it is composed of the same substance. Sat, Chit and Ananda. But that quantity of substance is very small. So quantitatively, by volume, by quantity, we are very small. But by quality, we are the same. So that is the relationship between the soul and Krishna. So, and this is where, different, philosophers try to construe this, oh, we're all Sat Chit and Ananda, we'll all in liberated state merge into the same. Because Krishna eternally exists, and so do we as jivas. And that he established right in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita. He established just in the 12th verse of the 2nd chapter. As soon as he began speaking, he establishes this fact. Never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you. Nor in the future shall either of us cease to be. That's very important. Nor in the future. Neither of us shall cease to be. Meaning we each will remain in the liberated state, in the conditioned state. There is separation. So that is the understanding of oneness and difference.
I think this is the most difficult concept of all the philosophies that I'm unable to understand. And
what we should understand is why that's a fact. Then it'll help us understand it is a fact. Why it is a fact. Krishna is the source of everything. Which means he created us. We are the source of it. So we may ask the one question. Why did he create us? He was bored one day, was tinkering in a factory one day and all kind of jiva tattvas. Why did he create us? One reason.
We wanted to enjoy the secret of Krishna.
No. Why did he create us? Why did Krishna create us? You end halfway through your statement. What did you say?
Wanted to enjoy with the devotees.
He wanted to enjoy. He wanted to enjoy with others. Krishna, the source of all happiness, still wanted to enjoy. So immediately when that desire first expanded his haladini potency, his pleasure potency. And then all the living in. So, if Krishna created us to enjoy, why he would ever create a situation where that opportunity would end. The only way Krishna can enjoy with it is if they are separate. If they are one, there's no enjoying with that person. You have to have, there's a relationship can be had between two living entities. And you cannot have a relationship with yourself. I mean, we do with our mind and intelligence, but right? So a loving relationship happens between two. So Krishna created us for that purpose. So then, of course, why he would create a situation in which that opportunity at some point would cease to be? It doesn't make sense. So that's how we can at least understand the logic of why we are eternally separated from Krishna. In our spirit soul, it has, again, only one natural function, and that is to enjoy with Krishna. And that is the meaning of bhakti. When Krishna says bhakti is the greatest of all things, what is bhakti? It's an exchange of love. An exchange of love can only happen between two persons, not one person. So that is why we'll always remain separated, but united in commonality by the Sat Chitananda feature.
I have one more question.
Yes.
So I was having a discussion with one gentleman the other day, and he said that, so the point of discussion was that we on this earth, in this material body, we all are traveling our own spiritual journeys. Can we all be same in understanding in our spiritual journeys? Can we all be on one level? Is it possible to be? So he said that we are supposed to be, while I said that yes, we are supposed to be, but we are traveling differently. But then when I say that, it also means that I'm saying that existence of adharmic tattva is okay. You know what I mean? Like, if somebody does something wrong, that means they are lower in their dharmic journey or spiritual journey, whereas the people who don't do wrong to others, they are spiritually higher.
So
then that would mean that existence of everything is okay.
It's I think the thing that you're acknowledging, saying okay is one thing, saying sanctioning it is another thing. So I believe by your statement saying it's okay, you're saying that it's a fact because everybody has their free will to express their desired course of action. But it doesn't make their decision right. So the free will is good. Like your sense of rightness is that everybody should have the free will to choose how they want to practice their life. But there is only one Sanatan Dharma. There is only one occupation for the soul. And that is eternal. Why this science? Why Krishna made the very important point in the very first verse of this chapter? What point does he make in the very first verse of this chapter? He makes a very important point.
Bhagavad Gita is spoken long back to Sun God Vivaswan.
Long back. And what is Krishna trying to illustrate by that point? That he has very old textbooks? What is he trying to illustrate by this point? Huh?
Sanatana Dharma is eternal.
This knowledge is the eternal fact. It's still the latest technology. This is still the most current research available. But it's millions of years old. Meaning it's always the same conclusion. Sarva dharmam prityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. It doesn't matter what era. It is always one conclusion. It is sanatana. It is eternal. So Krishna established that this transcendental knowledge is not, okay, this is today's knowledge. No. It is one set of knowledge. And so every living entity has only one set of knowledge to apply to itself for perfection of life. today, tomorrow, and yesterday. But by the existence of free will, we can choose to do many varieties of things. But still, there's only one ultimate success for the jiva. So, that is what yes, we can accept the variety in the world by the presence of free will. And that free will is actually very important. Because without free will, there cannot be love. It is then forced. Okay. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yeah.
Very very nice to see you back.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, one question here is, so Krishna created all of us because he wants to enjoy. But if I'm not giving pleasure to the Krishna, what does that mean?
We are going against his desire. Why are we suffering in this world? We are going against the purpose of our existence. That is the bodily concept. That's it. Now, again, Krishna will never impose his desire upon us. But that is a fact. When we enjoy the fruits of the material world without Krishna, we are a thief. We are stealing. I mean, no, I went to Whole Foods and I bought this vegetable. You haven't paid for it transcendentally until you offer it to Krishna. So, that's it. So our job is to realize that yes, Krishna is allowing me by my free will to exercise this separation, seeming separation. But with knowledge, I should realize actually it's not my natural state, it's not my intended state, and it's not my the state in which I can achieve the peace and happiness that I. So that's it. You have a follow-up. I can tell.
I do, but let me process that. Probably
Yes.
not on this call, on this question. The other question I have is, so when we are in the Krishna consciousness, what are the byproducts we can think of? So say if I'm doing the chanting, but I'm not doing good, I'm not behaving good with others, that's not good too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we are progressing in Krishna consciousness, what all the changes we should be able to see in our life, and what others should be able to see as well.
Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur gave the measurement of progress. I think I've told the story many times, and it's always nice telling, of the wedding party. They were going, the groom's party was going to the bride's place for marriage, and so they reached to the bank of the river one evening, and they boarded a beautiful boat, and they paid the boatman handsomely, and they said, okay, you take us down the river, we're all going to take rest, and in the morning we'll reach this place where the wedding is going to take place, and we'll have a wonderful sangha. Right? Everybody got comfortable, found their nice places to take rest in the beautiful boat, and the boatman started rowing, and rowing, and rowing. All night he rowed. And then woke up in the morning, and some of the groom's party started saying, oh, we must be close. We haven't moved anywhere. What happened? They started yelling, boatman, you fell asleep. And, no, I've been rowing all night. He's dripping in sweat. I said, look at me. I've been rowing all night. You've been rowing all night? What happened? So then they started to investigate. How come that happened? And they realized what happened? They forgot to untie the boat. They didn't untie the boat. So Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur says this is our spiritual example. we make progress in spiritual life to the extent we have detached, untied from all of our material hankerings. That is how we can objectively measure, am I making progress in spiritual life? Don't measure it in daily increments, hourly increments, maybe like 6-month increments. 6 months ago, was I watching more or less TV? 6 months ago, was I more addicted to cricket or less? 6 months ago, was I in that increment? Am I detaching somewhat from my material allurements? If I am, I'm making progress in spiritual life. But if I'm practicing devotional service and I'm just as attached to all my material, it's like rowing the boat with it tied to the shore. I'm not going to make any progress. So we can measure progress by the level of our detachment from all of our material affairs. So then the next question comes, well, I've been practicing, but I'm not detaching from my material affairs. Something's wrong with the system. It's not working. It's like somebody who goes into the gym and they start exercising, but the body's not changing. Is the gym broken? What's broken? The process how we're applying it. Something's off, right? Maybe I'm going and exercising really hard, but then I'm eating 2 tubs of ice cream afterwards. So something's off. So if I'm practicing devotional life and I'm not finding that, then I should inquire. Ask someone who can guide us. Maybe something needs to be adjusted. What am I missing? Because I'm not seeing this detachment from material. That is our measuring stick. And it's fairly objective. Something we can measure. It's hard to measure. Do I have more taste for the holy names? Do I have more humility? Those are harder to measure. Am I a little bit less materially attached today than I was 6 months ago, a year ago? If so, no, I'm making progress. And if I'm not making progress, that's why Rupa Goswami says, in active instruction, you should reveal your mind to a senior devotee who can help guide you in how to make progress when we're not making the progress that we desire. And ultimately, we pray to Krishna and Guru that please help me detach. Nadadam najanam nasundarim. I have no hope in that regard, but Krishna, by your mercy, I can detach.
Thank you, Guruji.
The detachment includes cell phone also.
Cell phone? No, why? Because if cell phone has database, pictures of the deities, sure, it's great. If cell phone has all kinds of other nonsense, then of course. So, we have to use all of our tools in relation, in proportionality. How they can be used effectively. That's Yukta Vairagya. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was the innovator of this principle in modern day. I mean, he was extraordinary in using so many technologies. He was criticized severely for riding in motor vehicles. He was criticized by all of the contemporary spiritualists. As sannyasi, up to that point, they never rode in cars. They fully objected it. But he said, no problem, you can criticize me. But by riding in a vehicle, in one city, I can give 5 lectures. Without it, I can give 2. No problem. That's Yukta Vairagya. Using it, not for the luxury and saving the feet pain, but by being able to expand the service of Krishna. So if your cell phone can help you in your service, great. If it cannot, put it away. At least put away the cell phone during chanting. Don't do double-fisted chanting. Cell phone in one hand, bean bag in the other. Put the phone. We have a new rule, social distancing. We should keep social 6 feet distance. You don't need a mask, but you need 6 feet distance from your phone. Then you're safe. Otherwise, it's too contagious, too attractive. And this virus is worse. You can't get rid of it. So keep your phone away while you're chanting. Then you can be attached to your phone the other 22 hours a day. Even you want to put it on your hip, people put it on their hip with a clip, no problem. But while you're chanting, 6 feet distance. Minimum.
Silent as well.
Huh?
Silent.
Silent. So I say as important. Because we're reminded, who is it? Wonder what it is.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes. Yes.
One question related to the questions from Mataji
Yes.
and Prabhuji Prabhu, connecting it.
Yes. Perfect.
So you mentioned like Krishna created all of us for his pleasure, right? But also I heard from other lectures where we came to this material world because we were envious of Krishna. We wanted to enjoy our own selves, right?
Mhm.
So these two are like two separate things. And from this verse of Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna descends himself to material world, he brings his associate along with him. So that way it makes the connection where Krishna created us so that he can enjoy with us. But the other topic of why we came here, that's because of our envy towards him. Is that why like the adharmic path is also there because we were envious of him and we wanted to enjoy on our own?
What you said, the other path?
Adharmic.
Adharmic path. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So both your statements are fully they hold it together. We were created for one reason, but we rejected that reason. Because we rejected that reason, we wanted to enjoy not with Krishna but separately, then we have the material existence. So because of our rejection of the reason for our creation, we are here. As soon as we reject that and go back to our original state, this material world has no relevance. Right? Now, why that happens? Free will. Adharmic exists because of free will. Remember, in Satyuga, there is no adharma. In Satyuga, everybody is Krishna conscious. Yet there is free will. So free will is not the cause, but it is the means. By the use of free will, one can. But free will is not the culprit. It is our use of the free will that is the culprit.
Oh, we make use of.
Yeah. So we made a bad decision. So guess what? Now it's time to make a good decision. Alright, we made a bad decision. No big deal. It's a big deal if we keep making the same bad decision. We already made the bad decision. And not once. Millions of lifetimes. Now we make the right decision. You know what? I'm not responsible with my free will. I'm not so good with it. Here, you take it. You know, somebody like who has a really fancy car. Really fast, fancy, luxurious car. But they're not a very good driver. They keep crashing. So what do? They let somebody else drive. They hire a driver. Say, you drive. I'll enjoy the game, but you drive. That is what we should do. You know what? I'm not really good driving my destiny, my path. Guru, you please take my free will and you tell me what to do. Because I have faith you can tell me what to do better than what I can tell me what to do. I've already tried my path at it. I've already driven and hit the wall too many times. You drive me on the path back home to God. That is the perfection of our use of free will. By giving it to, then we'll be fine. So let us not blame free will. But because of the presence of free will, there will always be adharmic there. But it's also, some people say, oh, because Krishna knows, he wants this adharmic. You know, he wants people, this, you know, some people say, you know, I'll come to tell him when Krishna wants me. Krishna always wants us back with him. He's always. What else? If he created us for a reason, why would that reason ever change? He always wants to be enjoying with us. But he'll not impose himself upon us. So both statements are fact. We're created for this reason, but we are here because of our exercise of free will.
But if we are eternal in our existence, as you said, then there is no moksha, right? Is there?
Moksha means simply liberation from what? Liberation from the modes of material nature. From the material concept. That is moksha. Moksha means I'm no longer influenced by the material modes of nature. I'm influenced by the spiritual energy. Devi Prakriti. That is moksha. Again, it's not a geographic destination. Yes, we liken it to that because in the spiritual world, everybody is free of material modes. But that also is present here. That's why Rupa Goswami says Jivan Mukta. The Jiva himself in the material world can be liberated. How? By becoming free from the world. So that is moksha. I'm no longer on the bodily concept. I'm fully acting on the platform of the spirit soul. That is liberation.
What is the Hindi or Sanskrit word of free will?
That's a good question, I know. Icha is desire. I don't think that's the same as free will. I don't know.
Svecha is own desire, but it's still a desire, right?
I don't know. I will try to find out.
Prabhu, one more question if
Yes.
that's fine, Prabhu.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not related to the current discussion, Prabhu, but I want to hear it from you. So, we always say like we cannot choose our family or like who we were born to or who is born from us, our spouse or anything, right? But there is this concept of collective karma where this some equation goes on and then you get assigned to. So how does that work, Prabhu? If you could elaborate, I want to hear it from you.
Krishna is the perfect accountant. So he knows every person's individual karma balance. He knows every single person's exact balance. And he also knows where everyone will be in different circumstances, different times. So at the time when it's appropriate, the big tornado comes and some people are lifted away and some people are not. Why? It's not random. It's based on the exact karma balance of those people. Karmic reactions are never given a little too much or a little too less in accordance with the action. It is exact and opposite to whatever action is done. So the fact that it happens collectively doesn't mean it has any different in my individual account. So whatever I receive along with others is still only related to my account. We each have our own account. But the fact that 10 of us all had the same account balance is just coincidental. And we're all swept away in whatever calamity is there, that is all circumstantial. But each of us had, I did not share some of the balance from any of the other 10 people. I was not taking somebody else's karma or vice versa. We each have our own balance that we have to address and deal with. And so in the mass, calamities in which collective karma is dispersed, it is not an average. Okay, these 10 people have an average of X, so they all get this. No, it is each and every individual gets exactly according to their actions. Never a little bit too much, never a little bit too low. It's not an approximate. We do approximations because we cannot. Krishna is exacting. So that is, and then that again, the details of the karma system is so complex. We don't have the mental processing power to be able to figure out how. All we can do is understand the principles that Krishna has perfect knowledge. He never gives too much or too little, and he doesn't make a mistake because he's all perfect. And so whatever we experience through our karmic reactions, we can have faith. There wasn't an oversight in the system. I was not intended to, be entered into this situation. always do an exact nature. So even if it's done collectively, it's still very precise to the individual.
Okay, Prabhu. So let's say like, so for me, I take myself as an example. So for me, there was a past and there will be a future, right? So as per karma, from my past birth, my karmic balance made me to land here, and I'm taking this path of devotional service. So this was also destined, right, Prabhu? Like it's in the destiny. And whether I finish this balance and go back, or whether I take another birth, maybe in a high or low, that is also destined. But how do I act, and how, I mean, again, the free will concept comes in. So if I go in the right path as per my previous thing, will that change my future, or the future is already there? Whether I do it plus or minus, that's not going to change.
This is I mentioned in the very beginning. Krishna knowing past and present we can digest. Knowing future we have the hardest time because of this question.
Yeah.
If Krishna already knows what's going to happen in the future, then what's the point? Right? I'm already programmed into a certain. So that is not the case. So our destiny is constantly being reshaped. So every action I make today is determining my next steps in the journey. But my eternal destiny is not fixed. It is constantly evolving. And yes, it can be changed. How do we know? Because Krishna says, Sarvatvam. Well, I messed up. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. Aham tvam. I'm going to take all, sarva pap, all of your sins. If he's going to take all of our sins, what is he saying?
Go back to him.
He's changing your destiny. You're destined to suffer. But he's saying, I'm going to change it. And then he says, Ma suchaha, do not fear. But how to get that? We have to surrender unto him. So by the process of devotional service, we are dramatically changing our trajectory. We're headed in this direction, and by going to devotional service, we're heading in a completely different direction. And that is the potency of the pure devotee. The pure devotee can give the association, the potency to the least qualified. You can see Srila Prabhupada once was asked by someone, because Prabhupada was saying that it's due to your piety that you come to the process of devotional service. So they asked, well, what piety we had? Prabhupada said, I gave you the piety. So he gave him the piety and the bhakti. So that's how our destiny can be completely changed. But we're always a willing participant in that. And so, but Krishna knows at each step what decisions we're going to make. The fact that he knows what we're going to do doesn't mean he's controlling what we do. Just like if there's a container of cookies in the kitchen, I know when my son goes in, he's going to eat one. But me knowing he's going to eat one isn't making him eat one. That's still his own decision. But I know, based on what he's going to do, he's going to eat. So Krishna's knowledge of the future doesn't mean he has trumped our free will. It is still always our decision. But his knowledge is so perfect that he knows in every circumstance we're going to face in the future what action we're going to take. That just gives us some scope of his extraordinary power. But we are not programmed by him. Okay, now you're going to do this now. It's always going to be our exercise of the free will. But he has knowledge to know how we'll use it. And when we decide to change the course of our destiny, that will also choose. And we can also change the course of our destiny to the down. We can have the greatest of fortune of being under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, studying his books, having acquired all this knowledge. And by Vaishnava Prad, we can completely destroy everything that we have worked for. Completely destroy it. We should not take for granted, oh, this is, I've cemented my destiny. You haven't cemented anything. Until you are fully purified There's always the potential. And especially Prabhupada warned us. We should have very healthy fear that, every opportunity, every step is a chance to lose everything that we have. And we should hold on to it, value it, cherish it, not take it for granted. Sometimes in familiarity, we become comfortable and we forget actually the value of what we have too. So yes, it is very potent to change our destiny to the better. We should also remember, if we're not very attentive in the process, we can also lose it very quickly. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, if you study Chaitanya Charitamrita, you'll see this repeatedly in his teachings, through his actions. Sometimes they'll think, wow, he's taking very strong actions against people. He's not taking strong actions against people to be vindictive, to warn us. He took one of the strongest actions against his own mother by not awarding her Krishna Prema. Of course, she's the eternal devotee, eternal mother in Vatsalya Bhav. But to show us the danger of Vaishnava Prad, he bestowed that. And did this with so many of his associates, to show us that we should really cherish the treasure we have and hold on to it. Yeah, it's very, very important. Any other questions?
Prabhuji,
Yes.
in chapter 2, it is the properties of the soul is described like it will not be disturbed by weapon or air or anything, fire like that. Then the spirit soul is being born in the world to undergo the miseries. So how these miseries can impact soul?
That's a good question. So this is explained in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that if the soul is Satchitananda, how we experience misery. Right? So as soon as the soul becomes covered by the false ego, and false ego is simply, I am this body. The consciousness, I am this body. As soon as the soul becomes covered by the false ego, it begins to perceive the experiences of the body. And what are the experiences of the body? Suffering. One after another. One after another. One after another. So, as soon as you break the false ego, the body still may be there. But what does the soul perceive? Spiritual bliss. That is how the pure devotee of the Lord go through so many bodily difficulties. Doesn't affect your consciousness. It's inconceivable to us because we have the smallest ailment and all of a sudden our whole existence is uprooted. But for the pure devotee, because there's no false ego, so the experience of the body does not permeate the consciousness. That's how in the conditioned state, due to the presence of a false ego, one experiences the ups and downs. But yes, the soul is never contaminated. It always remains pure. Another example I can give. My eyes may see 20/20 vision, perfect vision. But if I'm wearing cloudy, blue-colored glasses, what will I see? My vision is perfect, but what am I seeing? Blue and cloudy. Because I'm seeing through the lens. Right? Similarly, that's the false ego. Okay?
Yes.
Prabhuji, after chanting, probably you can share your experience of your visit to Vrindavan. Probably.
Okay.
I think it shall be.
Yes, can you share a little bit? Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Nitya Krishna Prabhu ki